The boy Elias once helped put away just woke up from a coma, and now he wants Elias to defend him. A beat of silence followed the words. "You're joking," Elias said, staring at the older woman sitting in his office. Her eyes were rimmed red, and she clutched a manila folder like it was holding her upright. "He remembers you," she said quietly. "Said you were the one who told the truth. Even if," her voice cracked, "even if the truth wasn't on his side back then." The air felt thick, heavy with something older than the years that had passed. Elias didn't answer. He just sat there, back straight in his chair, one hand resting on the armrest, like he was bracing for a blow. His office, quiet, orderly, even warm, suddenly felt like a witness box, and he was the one under oath. The woman, Dolores Marsh, though it had been so long he almost didn't recognize her, shifted forward slightly. His memory's patchy, but your face, he remembered that. Said you looked him in the eye, said you hesitated. Elias's jaw twitched. "I did my job," he said finally. "I know." She opened the folder slightly, then closed it again. Her fingers wouldn't stop moving. "And now, I'm asking you to do it again." He leaned forward slowly, elbows on the desk. "You want me to defend him? The same boy I convicted?" "Yes," she said, voice rough. "You helped bury him, but now he's back, and he's asking you to dig." She set the folder on the desk like it was a body. Inside were copies of medical reports, court transcripts, a grainy photo of a hospital bed with a thin frame in it. Elias didn't need to open it. The weight of it was already pulling him under. "How?" he asked. "How is he even—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "He woke up 3 weeks ago," Dolores said, "and the first name he said, after his own, was yours." The silence that followed was different this time, denser. "He says he didn't kill that cop," she continued, her voice shaking now. "Says it's all scrambled. Moments, voices, someone else there. A sound before the shot. Things that weren't in the trial. Things no one wanted to hear." Elias stood and walked to the window, needing to see something that didn't look back. Outside, the late-day sun was sliding down the buildings of Peachtree Street, casting long shadows over the sidewalks. It was a quiet hour, when the city's pulse slowed just enough to hear your own heartbeat. "You know what this would mean?" he said without turning around. Dolores nodded. "The DA's office will come for him again. They already don't like that he's alive. If he pushes this, if he files for a retrial, or worse, exoneration, they'll crush him. And you want me to stand in the way? I want you to stand with him, just once." Elias turned back, arms folded. His eyes, dark and unreadable, landed on the folder like it had insulted him. "You want redemption," he said. "For him. Maybe even for yourself." Dolores didn't flinch. "No, he wants it. I just want him to live long enough to get a shot." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Elias reached across the desk, laid one hand gently on the folder, and said, "Lo, I buried that case 13 years ago." Dolores nodded. "Then maybe it's time to dig it up." The hospital was quiet, but not soft. Too much silence, Elias thought, could be a kind of violence. He stood just inside the doorway of room 417 at Grady Memorial, his eyes on the man in the bed. Tavian Marsh, 27 years old now, his face sharper than Elias remembered, cheekbones pronounced under skin that had lost its fullness. A thin scar traced the side of his temple. He sat propped up, hands in his lap, watching the door like he'd been expecting someone, but not sure who. "You look like you saw a ghost," Tavian said, voice low but steady. Elias stepped forward. "Maybe I did." A flicker of a smile crossed Tavian's face, but it didn't reach his eyes. 13 years, he said. "Lot of time to think. Time to forget, too. But I remember you." Elias sat, Not in the hospital chair, but the one he'd pulled from the hallway. His suit didn't crease. His posture didn't falter. Only his hands, folded too tightly, betrayed the pressure building underneath. "You asked for me." Tavian nodded. "Yeah. Why?" Tavian exhaled, glancing toward the window. His left hand trembled slightly, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Elias was. "Because I watched your face the day the verdict came down," he said. "You didn't smile. Everybody else in that courtroom was clapping themselves on the back. But you looked like you just lost something." Elias didn't answer. Tavian turned back to him. "I figured if a man can carry guilt for 13 years, he might know what to do with mine." Elias's throat went dry. He reached for the file in his briefcase, the one Dolores had handed him, and opened it between them. "Tell me what you remember." Tavian paused, and for the first time, Elias saw uncertainty in his face. Not fear, not confusion, but the kind of hesitation that lives in a place deeper than memory. "I remember running," Tavian said. "Gunshots, one loud, one distant. I remember someone yelling, not a cop, a man, low voice. I remember hands on me, rough hands, pulling me down. Then pain. That's it." He touched his temple, as if feeling the years locked away behind the scar. "I didn't shoot that cop. I didn't even have a gun until they put it in evidence with my prints on it." Elias leaned back, processing. "They said they found it in your backpack." "I never carried a backpack." Elias blinked. He flipped through the photos, transcripts, notes. It had been presented as fact, undisputed. Even Tavian hadn't denied it at the time. "You were scared," Elias said. "I was 14, Tavian snapped. "Of course I was scared. They told me I'd never see my mother again. They told me to take a deal or take a life sentence." "But you didn't take a deal." Tavian looked at him, quiet now. "No," he said. "I took the fall." A nurse passed in the hallway. The beeping of a nearby monitor clicked back to life, soft and insistent. "You sure you want to reopen this?" Elias asked. "You'll be cross-examined. They'll paint you as a violent kid who got lucky the first time. This city doesn't forget its martyrs. Kellner was one of them." "I died too," Tavian said. "Only difference is, I came back." Elias felt something shift. Not belief, not yet, but something closer to duty. A tug in his chest he hadn't let himself feel in years. "You understand, this case won't just hurt the people who put you away," he said carefully. "It'll hurt the ones who didn't stop it. That includes me." Tavian nodded. "Then I guess we both got something to answer for." Elias stood. He closed the folder, slid it under his arm, looked down at the man in the bed who should have had a life by now. "I'll look into it," he said. "That's not what I asked," Tavian said. Elias met his eyes. "I'm not asking you to look. I'm asking you to fight." Outside the room, the sun had dipped low behind the skyline. Atlanta's long shadows crept across the linoleum like reaching hands. And Elias Kane walked out of Grady with ghosts on his heels and a case that could break more than silence. The clerk behind the plexiglass window looked about 20, with a ponytail and earbuds in. She barely glanced at him. "I need everything from State v. Tavian Marsh, 2012, Elias said, sliding his bar card under the glass. Her fingers froze mid-keystroke. "Old case," she muttered, pulling one earbud out. "That was the cop murder, right?" Elias didn't answer. 10 minutes later, he was seated alone in the research room with 2 cardboard boxes and a single flickering light overhead. The file labels were faded, the folders crumpled from time and carelessness. Still, the past was intact. Crime scene photos, blood on concrete, a handgun bagged in plastic, police radio transcripts. The same tired narrative. Responding officer David Kellner was shot during a stop and frisk gone wrong. Suspect was apprehended 2 blocks away. But then Elias found something that didn't fit. A supplemental report, unsigned, unfiled, and nearly torn in half. A line scrawled across the top in ballpoint pen. Second witness fled scene. ID unknown. Detective Moreland advised no follow-up. Elias's jaw tightened. Moreland, Detective Leon Moreland, had been the case's lead investigator. Back then, his name carried weight. Now, it carried something heavier. Scandal. A quiet IA probe. Whispers about missing evidence. 2 wrongful conviction suits pending. And still, no charges. He stared at the note, heart knocking harder in his chest. This wasn't just oversight. This was omission. He pulled his phone from his coat and dialed a number he hadn't used in 5 years. Claudine Price, a voice answered after 2 rings. It's Kane. A pause. That explains the headache I just got. I need a favor. I'm off the books, Elias. I write opinion columns now, not FOIA requests. I'm not asking for a column. I need internal memos. Anything you can get me on Moreland, especially tied to the Kellner shooting. There's a buried witness. Another pause. Then, you're back in it. I never really left. Claudine sighed. I'll see what I can do, but if you get a tail, don't call me crying about it. He hung up without smiling. The next folder was thinner. Evidence handling log. Elias traced the chain of custody. The gun allegedly found in Tavion's backpack had changed hands 3 times. Once with Moreland, once with a tech named Harris, and once with someone who hadn't signed their name. Sloppy. Or intentional. Elias leaned back, thinking. That night in court, 13 years ago, he'd noticed the timeline didn't quite add up. But it had been close enough for the jury, close enough for a conviction. Now it was unraveling. He gathered the pages, made copies, and slipped them into his briefcase. As he stepped into the hallway, his phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. Stop digging, counselor. Some things stay buried for a reason. Elias stared at the screen, then looked down the corridor. Empty, silent, but someone was watching. He pocketed the phone and walked out, his expression unreadable. Whatever this was, cover-up, threat, or just a bad memory with teeth, it had just gone from cold case to active fire. And Elias Kane? He was already too deep to walk away. Leon Moreland lived in a gated cul-de-sac in Decatur, in one of those single-story ranch-style homes with a flag on the porch and cameras under the eaves. The yard was tidy, too tidy, like someone had cleaned it not for comfort, but for control. Elias stepped out of his car, suit crisp despite the Georgia heat, and walked up the path like he was still a prosecutor, like he had a warrant in his coat pocket and God at his back. He knocked. The door opened halfway. Moreland stood there, grayer, heavier, with that same sideways smirk he used to wear on the stand like a badge. Well, look who the hell it is, Counselor Kane. Elias didn't smile. I need a word. You need an appointment. I'm not here for small talk. Moreland narrowed his eyes, then stepped aside. Then come in and say what you came to say. The house was dark, cool, smelling faintly of old wood and cheaper bourbon. A wall of framed commendations loomed over a leather recliner. One photo caught Elias's eye. Moreland and Kellner, arm in arm, both younger, both smug. You still hanging on to that? Elias asked. He was my partner. He was also part of a bad shoot. Moreland laughed once. Watch it, Kane. Elias sat without asking. Tell me about the second witness. The silence that followed stretched. Moreland stayed standing. I don't know what you're talking about. Report says you advised against follow-up. Moreland shrugged. If it wasn't in the final file, it didn't matter. You buried it. No, Moreland said, smile gone now. I protected the case. Big difference. Elias leaned forward. You planted that gun, didn't you? You or one of yours. Kid had no backpack, no motive, but you needed a suspect. Moreland's jaw clenched. That cop was dead. People wanted blood. The brass wanted headlines. What they didn't want was some damn mystery. So you gave them a story? I gave them justice. No, Elias said quietly. You gave them a lie. And now that lie's waking up. Moreland moved closer, slower, his face tightening like old leather. What's this really about, Kane? You trying to scrub your conscience clean? Little too late for that, don't you think? Elias stood. His voice was low, even, lethal. You framed a kid, and I helped you do it, whether I knew it or not. But here's the difference between us, Moreland. I'm not scared to put it under a microscope. Moreland stepped back. You reopen that case, people start asking questions you won't like the answers to. You think you're ready to burn down the whole system to clear one name? If that's what it takes, Moreland didn't reply. But as Elias turned to leave, the old cop said one last thing. You start digging around long enough, you're gonna find things that don't stay in the past. Some dirt's still wet. Elias paused in the doorway, something cold settling in his gut. Then he left. Back in his car, he sat for a moment, just breathing. Then he picked up his phone. Voicemail. Claudine's voice, tight, not panicked, but close. Call me back now. That report you wanted? It's worse than you think. Something about a missing body cam, and the chain of custody is broken in 5 places. Someone was cleaning house, even after Tavion went under. I think someone knew he might wake up. Elias closed his eyes. For a second, he just sat there, listening to the engine tick. Then he started the car. They hadn't just buried a kid. They'd buried the truth, and now it was clawing its way back up. The courtroom felt smaller than Elias remembered. Maybe it was the weight he carried now. Or maybe it was the presence of Tavion Marsh, seated beside him in a tailored gray suit that hung slightly loose on his frame. His hands were still, his gaze steady. No tremor, no flinch, just focus. He belongs here, Elias thought, not as a defendant, as a survivor. The motion to vacate the conviction had drawn a crowd. Press, activists, off-duty cops lining the back row like a wall. The judge, Honorable Marion Dorsey, wasn't known for empathy, but she was known for her appetite for facts. Elias stood slowly. His voice, when it came, was clear, controlled, and cold as iron. Your Honor, we are here today to undo a lie that put a child in a cage, that nearly cost him his life, and that has stained the integrity of this court for over a decade. He turned toward the gallery, toward the public record that had already judged Tavion once. 13 years ago, I prosecuted Tavion Marsh. I stood right here and told a jury that he shot and killed Officer David Kellner. I believed the evidence. I trusted the file. And I was wrong. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Elias didn't blink. Since then, evidence has emerged that the weapon in question changed hands without documentation, that a witness was never interviewed, that the lead detective, now under federal review, advised against following up on that witness, and that a body cam was disabled, not due to malfunction, but deliberate omission. He paused, letting it settle. Mr. Marsh was not just failed, he was framed. The DA's office sent a junior ADA to fight the motion, an uncomfortable 20-something who tried and failed to argue procedural finality. But then Claudine's documents hit the record. The missing footage, the corrupted timestamps, the unsigned chain of custody logs. And finally, Dolores Marsh took the stand. My son was 14, she said, voice shaking but proud. He was scared, but he told me then and now that he didn't pull that trigger. They just needed him to look like someone who did. When it was Tavian's turn, the room held its breath. "I lost my voice for 13 years, he said, facing the judge. "Not because I couldn't speak, but because no one wanted to hear it. And now that I'm back, I don't want revenge. I want recognition of what was stolen and who took it." Silence, then murmurs again. Elias stood once more. This isn't just about Mr. Marsh. This is about trust, about what happens when the people sworn to protect the law use it as a weapon, and what it takes to make it right. Judge Dorsey took a recess, 40 minutes that stretched like a lifetime. When she returned, her voice was calm, but there was an edge in it. Given the new evidence, the documented misconduct, and the extraordinary circumstances of this case, the court hereby vacates the conviction of Tavian Marsh. The words hit the room like thunder, but Elias barely heard the noise because Tavian had turned to him slowly and for the first time ever extended a hand. And Elias took it. No fanfare, just a moment, small, human. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Elias didn't stop. He walked past the microphones, the shouting, the bright flashes. That night, back in his office, he dropped the briefcase onto the floor, loosened his tie, and finally placed a new record on the turntable. It wasn't Coltrane this time. It was Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit. The needle scratched once, then the voice came through, soft, haunting. As it played, Elias sat alone in the dark, listening. Not for comfort, but for memory, for reckoning. Because redemption didn't come with applause. It came with blood and silence and the quiet ache of doing what should have been done long ago.